guys? Welcome back to another sports stuff video. Today, I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and their offseason plan. Now, you guys may be wondering, Nick, why are we talking about the team that just won the Super Bowl? Their team is perfectly fine. Well, what would you do if I told you that they're starting wide receiver 1, starting left tackle, backup running back, starting punter, and starting defensive end were all free agents? Let's talk about it. So, notable free agents for the Kansas City Chiefs. Orlando Brown is a free agent. Jerick McKinnon, their running back, is a free agent. Juju Smith-Schuster is a free agent. Carlos Dunlap and Tommy Townsend, all 5 of these guys, I think, are notable team members who are going to be free agents. Let's talk about Juju first. Juju has 78 receptions for 933 yards and 3 touchdowns, not including his clutch drive in the Super Bowl. I think Juju is the reason that they honestly scored that touchdown, which became it was enough points to win that game. I forgot what drive it was, but he had like 4 catches for 50 yards. Maybe he had the touchdown if I remember correctly. But Juju absolutely is the number 1 wide receiver on their depth chart. Let me actually move my little head down here. I'm in the way of some stuff. But yeah, Juju is absolutely their number 1 wide receiver on the depth chart. Now, he's not the number 1 receiver. He's the number 1 wide receiver. I think Travis Kelce pretty easily takes that number 1 receiver role on the depth chart. But he said multiple times on multiple interviews he's willing to take a pay cut to stay with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs need to remember that. And he's a good building block for the room. If you're building a wide receiver room from the ground up, which I feel the Chiefs are about to start doing, and Juju is the number 1 receiver you're building off of, that's a pretty decent room to start building off of. You got Kadarius Toney, you got Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, he might be on his way out, but I think it's a really good room for them that starts with Juju. And here's the deal. I have about 3 for $45 million deal, $8 million signing bonus with $25 million guaranteed spread out. So his cap hit never hits over $20 million a year, which for this day and age is insane that it's not hitting over $20 million for a number 1 wide receiver. I would like to see more touchdowns come out of him next year, but it was his first year at the system. He did just have come off shoulder surgery. As you can see in the picture, he's wearing a harness on his left shoulder. So I think give him another year to get even more healthy. I feel Juju has a chance to break not only 1,000 yards, but also have 5 or 6 touchdowns. Jerick McKinnon, their number 2 running back. He's a great receiving back. He alleviates Isaiah Pacheco's touches. Now Isaiah doesn't have to be on the field at 3rd down. I think at the goal line when you're obviously wanting to pass the ball, I think Jerick McKinnon's an elite option. He's proved that he has chemistry with Patrick Mahomes down the stretch. I believe he had 6 touchdowns in the last 3 or 4 games of the season. In the playoffs, he played really well, especially because he was willing to block, which I think in a running back, especially a backup running back who's going to be on the field for your receiving plays, that's important. I did a 2-year, $12.5 million deal, $3 million signing bonus with 5.5 guaranteed. Never goes over $8.5 million. If you look at the salary cap, the salaries of running backs, a backup or even just a receiving running back right now goes for about $6 to $7 million. So he already gets paid more than guys his level. But I think Jerick McKinnon is honestly the number 1 receiving back in the league. Now, yes, there's Alvin Kamara. Yes, there's Christian McCaffrey. But I'm talking about I wouldn't trust him running the ball. But if he's catching the ball, I believe in him. Next is Orlando Brown Jr. Orlando Brown Jr. had a little bit of a letdown of a season, but still had a pretty decent season. They did trade for him, so he has the leverage in any contract negotiation. I wouldn't personally sign him long term. I would probably tag him and either tag him and keep him for 1 more year and then extend him, or I would tag and trade him. So the tag is $19.9 million, so $20 million to have your starting left tackle. That's a lot of money. And it's a team that's cap-stricken because of the Patrick Mahomes deal, the Travis Kelce deal, the upcoming Chris Jones deal. L'Jarius Sneed's going to need a deal. You have Joe Tooney. You got guys on big deals. So, do you want to have another player? I wouldn't. I would tag and trade him. That's me personally. And we can talk about that later on in this slideshow. Free agent targets. Poona Ford, honestly, might be my number 1 guy that I'm trying to go for. He's a run stuffer with pass rush skill sets. He's been sitting on Seattle for years and shown he can play. I'd pay him about $7 million a year. If you can get Poona Ford and you can get Chris Jones next to each other, you have one of the widest D tackle rooms in the league. Those guys are big and wide, and I think next to each other they can just eat the middle of that the middle of the defensive line when they're playing together. Ogbonio Okoronkwo, the Texans linebacker defensive end. He had 5 sacks, 32 tackles in his lone excellent season. He's still developing, but had a promising season entering free agency. He is 27 years old, so he's not like a 22-year-old guy. He is 27. He was a 2018 fifth-round pick, but I think Okoronkwo has the opportunity to, with more playing time, be really solid. I think a 3-year, maybe $27 million deal, about $8 to $9 million a year is what I would pay him to be my pass rusher. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in him. And then Marquez Callaway. He's a speedster who has hands, and they're reliable hands. And he could replace McCall Hardman, because McCall Hardman is a free agent. I think it's a really high chance that he does not come back, and another team's going to give him the bag, because he's a speedster. And every team in the NFL needs a speedster. But I think Marquez Callaway, 3-year, maybe $12 million, guarantee 8 of it. Like, I think you can really get him. Trade targets. So I think Brandon Cooks. I think either Jets wide receiver Denzel Mims or Elijah Moore, and Jerry Hughes. Now, I forgot to edit that slide. It's whatever. Trade targets. Brandon Cooks. Currently, he has a 1-year, $16 million deal remaining. None of it is guaranteed. So I think it is very possible for the Chiefs to trade for him and renegotiate that deal. Maybe go to a 1-year, $12.5 million or a 2-year, $25 million deal and guarantee most of it. Let's just say it's a 1 year for 12.5, guarantee 10 of it. Like, give him more guaranteed money, but a cheaper overall deal to lower his cap hits. And I think you can get Brandon Cooks easily. He's a solid number 1 receiver. And I say this because I feel like the Chiefs, especially if they don't get Juju back, is a team full of number 2 and number 3 receivers. Now, yes, Patrick Mahomes can make that work, but I want a solid, bona fide number 1 receiver who has a skill set of a number 1 receiver. Because I feel like all the skill sets of all the receivers on this team, even Juju. Juju's an elite number 2 wide receiver. He's an okay wide receiver 1. But Brandon Cooks is a good wide receiver 1. And I think that's something that they could really benefit from having. I think only a late day 2, early day 3 pick, maybe your 3rd round pick, or your 4th and 6th round pick could get Brandon Cooks and renegotiate that contract. Next up is Elijah Moore or Denzel Mims. Either option gives you a solid option. Like, honestly, they do have 2 different play styles. Elijah Moore is that route runner with hands. Denzel Mims is that speedster. It's kind of like 2 different kind of play styles you want to play with. You got Kadarius Toney, who's twitchy. You got Sky Moore, who's developing. Get either one of these guys, and they can give you a skill set. They're both cheap, and it's cheap to acquire them. And steal another wide receiver from New York. You got Kadarius Toney last year. He improved. If you have Elijah Moore on this Chiefs team, that's a cheat code. It'd be a cheat code. And finally, I think Jerry Hughes should be a trade target. He's another cheap veteran option at defensive end. The last 2 years, you had Melvin Ingram, and then you got Carlos Dunlap. I think Jerry Hughes could be the next defensive end that the Chiefs add on to be opposite Frank Clark and George Karlaftis. He showed flashes of his old self, but I think he improved on his old self. I mean, there were times I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy should be in the Pro Bowl, man. I think I might have voted for him to be in the Pro Bowl at one point. But it's a $5 million deal. So let's say halfway through the season, you want that $5 million to sign someone else. You can cut him and have no issue. And it's more veteran help for this young room. I think they're going to draft another defensive ends in this draft. As you see in upcoming slides, I think they're going to draft a defensive end in round 1. So I think get another veteran who can, back them up or even start over them and just teach them how to be a player. And speaking of the draft and defensive ends, number 1 overall at number 31, I would go Will McDonald. I think Will McDonald is, at 31, absolutely the best pass rusher still available. He's an amazing run stuffer, pass rusher. I think he's a test off the charts. I'm excited for Will McDonald to test at the Combine. I think he's going to be outstanding. He's going to fly up boards. Jack Campbell. Willie Gay is a free agent. I don't know if I would re-sign him because, got to remember, you're cap-stricken. For the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to have barely any cap space. So if you can get Jack Campbell, he's a really solid linebacker, good zone guy. I think Willie Gay, you let him go, you replace him with Jack Campbell, and you move on. Parker Washington and Xavier Hutchinson. Yes, 2 wide receivers back-to-back after I've been saying sign and trade these wide receivers. I would absolutely go probably with Xavier Hutchinson over Parker Washington, if I'm being honest. Parker's more that route runner with hands. Xavier Hutchinson is a speedster with a deep ball ability and a 50-50 ability. Deuce Vaughn, again, I said sign Jerick McKinnon, but I think if you have Isaiah Pacheco as your bell cow, Jerick McKinnon as your third down receiving back, you have Deuce Vaughn to be that speedster, kind of like the Boston Scots of the Eagles. You know, they have Miles Sanders, they have Kenneth Gainwell, and then they got Boston Scots. I think Deuce Vaughn could be that elite third running back to finish out this running back room and replace Melvin Gordon. Trey Dean, I've seen people taking him way lower. Trey Dean is absolutely a Kansas City Chief kind of player. He is mobile. He can basically do everything. He's a safety corner mix, kind of like Dax Hill is a safety corner from last year's draft. I think Trey Dean III from Florida, he can do everything. He can tackle, he can pass rush, he plays nickel extremely well, but he's terrible at catching the ball. I think Trey Dean, though, with the Chiefs, that could be a really good option for them. Be that third safety next to Juan Thornhill and Justin Reed. Ventrell Miller, same thing. I think he's a really solid linebacker. Add more depth to this linebacker room. You got Leo Chenal. You got Nick Bolton. You draft Jack Campbell. Get that fourth linebacker in Ventrell Miller to be a possible backup special teamer. Stetson Bennett was a fun pick. I think that'd be really fun. Replace Chad Henne. You have Chris Aludicon on roster, but get Stetson Bennett, man. I think going from Georgia winning 2 national championships to then going to the Chiefs and having like 4 or 5 Super Bowls in your career by backing up Patrick Mahomes is such a Stetson Bennett thing to do. I think it's so funny to me that I have him going to the Chiefs. Cameron Young, I think, would be honestly really good on those goal line stopping the run plays. I think Cameron Young could be a really solid guy, and everyone else, I don't really know about them. They're just kind of guys that fill out the roster. Potential shocking moves. So I think Orlando Brown could be tagged and traded to the Jets for Elijah Moore and a first-round pick. I think it's a very high possibility of happening. So the Jets send a first-round pick and a guy who doesn't want to be there for Orlando Brown, a starting left tackle, for a team that Mekhi Becton keeps getting injured. Apparently showed up really overweight last offseason. So, get your franchise left tackle. And with the Chiefs getting that first-round pick from the Jets, I have them taking Peter Skoronski, my personal number 2 left tackle in the class. I like Paris Johnson a little bit more than Peter Skoronski, and Paris Johnson actually went a pick before me in the mock draft. So if Paris Johnson would have been there, I would have grabbed Paris Johnson to be my left tackle of the future. But Peter Skoronski is still a really good guy. And Will McDonald, again, he's there at 31. I'm taking him. Also, if you want to move on from Joe Thuney in a year or two, you can move Peter Skoronski to left guard and draft another left tackle. But I think Peter Skoronski at left tackle will be perfectly fine. I think another possible shocking move is DeAndre Hopkins ends up a Kansas City Chief. I think there's a real possibility that they trade him to the Chiefs and they get like a second round, third round pick from the Chiefs. It'd be the best offer they can get. And they renegotiate Hopkins' deal to where it's a 1-year massive cap hit, salary. So for a 1-year deal, win a championship, and then DeAndre Hopkins can leave. Or I think what's honestly a really shocking move, nothing happens. I think this could be a team that just settles, drafts guys, doesn't do any big trades or signings, just drafts guys and let the cards play out. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post next. I hope you guys did enjoy this. Honestly, I want to do more. If you guys want to leave the team you want me to do next, let me know. I'll see you guys later. Peace and bye.